This is Chris Mitchell with the Institute for Local Self-Reliance at the Broadband Communities Summit in Austin, Texas in 2016. Talking with Matt Rantanen. Would you tell us who you are?
So I'm the Director of Technology for the Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association. I run the Tribal Digital Village Network in Southern California for 19 federally recognized tribes and a handful of tribes in Southern Riverside County.
Tell me about Tribal Digital Village.
Tribal Digital Village is a high-speed wireless fixed microwave broadband network that supports the 19 federally recognized tribes of the Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association and a handful of tribes in Southern Riverside County in Southern California.
What was the need in these tribal nations?
So back in 2001, I joined the project in October, and we realized that we got a grant from Hewlett-Packard to do a digital village, which is one of their philanthropy projects, and it was to help support resource centers and after-school programs in schools. And we realized that without the access to the internet, they weren't going to have the advanced opportunities that other kids were going to have. So we had to devise a system to build a network to support that infrastructure that they were trying to put into each reservation. And network was necessary, so we started on the path of building the Tribal Digital Village Network.
And why did you decide to build your own network within the tribal nations?
So in Southern California, you have the beach, the nice places to live, and then you have where the reservations were put, which was the base of the mountains in the valleys where the less fortunate had to live on the reservation system. So there was no infrastructure. No incumbent telcos or providers were providing services past a certain point outside of town. They did not see a return on investment that made sense to them. They did not want to negotiate any of the rights of way with the sovereign nations of the tribes. And so they basically just said, yeah, we're going to stop here. So even trying to entertain them coming to build it with us or for us wasn't an option. So we basically had to take it upon ourselves to solve this problem and build our own network.
I sometimes wonder if that's actually better in the long run. Do you think it's better that they did not want to invest in you so you could invest in yourselves?
It's an interesting question because I think it's kind of a double-edged sword. Yes, because now we have control of it and we are dictating how things are growing. No, because I think it took us a long time to get where we're at, and I think we could have provided a better service earlier on if we had a partner. But now that we're where we're at, I don't think we'd do it differently. Maybe a little bit more training up front, maybe understanding a little bit more of the network topology and build out process before we just went out and stuck stuff on poles and made stuff happen. But it's really unique, and it becomes a great example for other folks that, look, you can just go out and hang this stuff up and put it up and make things work. And sure, you're going to have to get training, but you can get a long ways before you have to turn into a professional networking person. So.
And tell me about some of the challenges you've had in terms of you have a solid network within the tribal nations, but I understand you had problems getting outside to connect to the larger internet.
Yeah, so over the years, we've gone from $90 per megabit per month when we were getting provided basically a DSL service. And then we upgraded to a 45 meg circuit, which was, I think, called a DS3. And we dropped that down to $60 a month per meg. We dropped it down to $30 a month per meg. So we started to get to the point where we were like, oh, we're actually making some difference. Then we cut that in half, and we've been operating at that level for, I think, 4 to 5 years. But in the last 4 to 5 years, actually going on 6 years now, I've been in the process of trying to negotiate with the fiber providers in the area an option to get service to us at a wholesale rate that was affordable, because we're starting to see those small startup wireless companies and things creep in that are actually getting access to bandwidth at an in-town wholesale rate. So there's somewhere under $1, and we're still paying 15 to 16 times that. So in the recent year, I've been able to partner the Tribal Digital Village, and actually an opportunity for all tribes in the state of California. The Department of Technology, California's Department of Technology, has offered up help in getting in the door to have the negotiation services started, as well as a price line of $7 per meg, so which is about half of what we're doing, guaranteed for folks that are tribal, so they can get the state rate. So we are actually lucky enough now to have some of those. We've dropped some of those to a third of that and to half of that, and we are looking at a new 10 gig e-circuit at the head end and a 10 gig e-circuit at the far end. So we are actually redundant. We have no longer a single point of failure design.
And you work with tribal nations around the country in many ways. Tell us a little bit about that and the state of connectivity in other tribal nations.
Yeah, so in the last decade or so, the amount of work we've done on the ground has kind of lent us to be experts in that community networking, and we've been recognized and brought around the U.S. So I work with the National Congress of American Indians. I also represent tribes on the FCC's Native Nation Broadband Task Force. And, we've done studies with groups and different things and just general conversation. And the plain old telephone service is still 70% or less penetration on tribal reservations. So, that's a bad number, especially in today's age when that should have been built out. And then we're looking at broadband, with Lifeline changing over to support broadband and things like that. We still have an access level hovering around 10%. Of tribes of 567 federally recognized nations have access to internet, let alone adoption and those things. So yeah, there's a big gap to solve.
Well, and it seems like there's this self-provisioning is something that is catching on in more places. Where else is this happening?
So self-provisioning is a key thing for tribes. Self-governance has always been a strong leading factor in the structure of how tribes operate. Because they are sovereign nations, they need to get to a self-sustaining level. And the tribal village example has provided opportunity for folks in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, like at the Coeur d'Alene Reservation. Valerie Fast Horses has got a fabulous network up there that's hybridized between fiber to the home and wireless solutions. The Yurok and Karuk tribes in California are doing a great network. The Washoe tribes are messing around with the beginnings of that. The Ute tribes running up to 395 with the Digital 395 project now have access to fiber, and they're interested in building these projects. I know that there are projects across the United States. Fond du Lac, we have, I think we're at 12 tribal telco companies now that are also crossing into broadband, especially with Lifeline having a requirement for broadband. So things are definitely growing on that level.
Is there anything else that we haven't missed you want to tell us about these approaches?
I guess the thing that, I don't know if we missed anything, but it's just really key to have in any grassroots or, community building organization, you have to have champions in the community. So relying on not necessarily experts, but people from the community that want to be a part of this, that help drive this from within. The benefit of TDV, Tribal Digital Village, is that we're tribally owned and operated by all 19 of those tribes. My staff is mostly tribal, and we have the benefit of people on the ground that are seeing their cousins and their brothers and people like that get an advantage of having access to this network. So it's really nice to have people on the ground doing this. We find that in the tribal community, especially, if you come in as an outsider, deliver a product, and then go away and expect that product to survive, you will have a failure rate of about 100%. If you are engaged in the community and you involve community members as champions, you will most likely succeed.
In terms of needing a local champion, do you have any advice for would-be local champions or people who are trying to draft a local champion?
The wellspring is youth. Our kids are the ones that are seeing the value of this, and they are the ones that have grown up through our program. So in 2001, we ran a program called the Summer Youth Academy, where they had GPS units and binoculars, and we bought them all boots. Excuse me. They went out on the mountaintops of the reservations and did line of sight checks for network path, and identified the majority of the locations that we're using today. So the youth is definitely the key for that.
And would you consider yourself a champion locally for this network?
It's interesting because I was clearly an outsider coming in. I am tribal, Cree, but I came from a different community. I was in the .com industry, and I got hired in to do community web portals. And so initially, no, but I became trusted within the community for the work that I was doing. I was working with all the local tribal governments. I believe I became respected to the point where they admired the amount of work that I was doing on the ground with individuals and the rapport that I had with folks. And so I think now, 15 years later, I live in the area. I used to live on reservation, and I think now I might be considered, a local champion. Clearly, I'm not from the Southern California tribes, but I definitely identify with folks, and I do get to speak on behalf of some of their tribal governments, depending on the situation in the room.
Great. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.